The blessing of the internet today is how much information we have available to us, especially if you consider that most of us carry around access to it on our smartphones. The curse of the internet is how much information we have available to us today. Let me show you what I mean by a quick look at some of the statistics of the growth of information and data on the internet from 2010 to 2020. Now, Oracle estimates that in 2010 we had about 1 zettabyte of information on the internet to over 45 zettabytes in 2020. Now, a zettabyte is 1 trillion gigabytes, or 1 followed by 21 zeros. It's a number so big we can't even fathom it with our minds. Not all this information is new information. Some of it is copied, some of it is reused, some of it is personal data or just backup data that's stored on the internet. And even a video like this adds to the exponential growth of data. Sorry about that, but I had to make my own little contribution here. Now, some of this information is really great, and some of it is really bad or purposely misleading information. We've reached such a crisis with the quality of information that the World Health Organization has declared that we are now in a state of what they call an infodemic because of the amount of misinformation on the internet. They estimate that on some platforms, almost 70% of the content is either misinformation or disinformation. Now, the World Health Organization is concerned primarily with issues of disease and health, but the same statistics, I think, carry over to other fields, more or less. So how do we as consumers of information sift through all this, or even know if we're getting appropriate or inappropriate information, good or bad, informed or ignorant sources? Now, let me give you a quick disclaimer here. I teach primarily in the area of biblical and theological studies, but don't click to another video just yet. In this video, I'm going to give you several guidelines for evaluating websites and online resources that you can use with any website, biblical, medical, or even bicycling content. So stick around. You're watching the Caffeinated Bible. My name is David Paris, and the goal of this channel is to take what I've been teaching for the past 20 to 30 years in seminaries and graduate schools around the world to anyone, anywhere via YouTube. So if you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you get updates when I post them. Give it a thumbs up, that really helps me. But most of all, if you can share this video with someone else, that really helps me out a great deal. Let me give you a little background as to how I got to the point of making this video. When I taught in-person classes where the people actually came into the room and they sit there and I drone on and they listen to me about a topic that I find very interesting, but they may not have, the basic model was this. As the talking head at the front of the class, one of my jobs was to make sure that you knew which books to check out the library to get the best information you could, especially when it came to writing papers. In the early 2000s, as theological and biblical resources grew on the internet, I realized I needed to teach the students how to make the best and appropriate use of online resources. To do this, I developed an assignment called a bibliography. They had to work in small groups and come up with a bibliography for the best websites for the particular class they were taking at that time. So if they were in a class on Koine Greek grammar, they had to find the 10 best websites on Koine Greek grammar and write up why these were the best sites. With the shift to online classes, things really changed. Last year I had students spread all over the globe. So any advice I offered on books or sections of the library on Fuller's campus was going to be pretty useless. They're not going to fly in from wherever they are to Pasadena to use the library. The age of the talking head at the front of the class is gone. Rather, my role now is to equip the students with the skills to evaluate what information is good, where to find it, and if those sources are trustworthy. How can you tell if that information that you're looking at is accurate or misleading on the internet? How can you tell if that information is well researched and documented or just some random idea that some person has? Now it's time for Dave's top 6, I know I should have 10, but I could only come up with 6, guidelines for sifting through information on the internet. Now, quick disclaimer here. This is not intended to be a hierarchy of criteria. In other words, number 1 is the most important type of thing. Rather, think of this as like a spider's web of 6 criteria. Some sites have all these elements, others might only have a couple of them. Look to see which of these criteria apply and how well they apply to that site. Now, these 6 criteria are all based upon how we should be evaluating books. The first criteria is sort of the gold standard, and that is sites that are accessed through an institution, an educational institution or a library usually. Now, if you take a look at Fuller's online resources here, you can see they're very, very extensive, but not everyone is going to have access to that. This is where local libraries really come in handy. The Pikes Peak Local Library District here in Colorado Springs has an extensive set of databases for you to look up information if you have a library card and you've registered your password. The databases and websites that they have access to usually cost money to have access to, and they are not cheap. But that institution has done the hard work for you. They have vetted that information to make sure it is good and up to date, and you're getting good, solid information. So let's take a look at other websites. Now, I'm going to be using criteria that you should also be using when you buy a book, and I just happen to have one here. The first one is who runs or publishes the site. Now, with a book, that would be the author. And look who wrote this one. The second one is who runs or publishes the site. In this case, with the book, it's Cascade Books. The third one is what is the goal of that website or book? This is where you take a look at the preface or the introduction to the book. In that, the author should tell you why they wrote that book and what the purpose of it is. The fifth one is how reliable is the information on that site? Look for an about information. Look for where it tells you something about the author so that you can see if they're reliable or trustworthy. Finally, do they have awards, institution affiliations, or recommendations? And this is where on the back of the book you'll see the recommendations from other authors regarding this particular book. So let's take and apply those criteria that we use for books and apply them to a website. Now, when you go to a website, the first thing you want to do is look for an about link for that website. Then look over who they are and what their purposes for that website are. After all, you don't want to take information from just any stranger on the street. Also, take a look at the address at the top. See if it has a .gov, which says this is a paid site and it's run by a government, or a .edu. That means it's an educational institution that's hosting this site. This is often a great indicator that you are accessing trustworthy information. If it's a YouTube information, click on the channel's homepage to see who's producing this information and any background about them. Watch for so-called experts who are teaching outside their area of expertise, especially those who claim to have some sort of specific or unique insight or information that just they have access to, whether it's theological, medical, or whatever. Now you can quickly check out a person by doing a Google search for that individual and getting background on them. On YouTube, you can click on my channel icon and then on the home page, click on the More next to my picture there to find out more about me. You can use the links there to find my LinkedIn page or academia.edu page, check out my degrees, work experience, schools I've taught at, and so on. And some of my publications can be accessed on academia.edu as well. Now, credible websites will tell you about themselves. Do they have expertise in that area? Now, right now, Robert F. Kennedy is being nominated to run the Secretary of Health and Human Services. The big problem is he doesn't have a medical degree or training. He's a lawyer and a conspiracy theorist, so he's not a great person to consult for the top medical job in the country. Criteria number 3, just like the publisher. Who pays for this site? Now this is really related to the second guideline about the author, but it's slightly different. Larger websites are going to cost a lot of money to host, maintain, and keep up to date. See who is sponsoring that site. This is where the .gov or .edu overlaps with this criteria. These government institutions or educational institutions are then paying for and maintaining those sites. A .com site is usually used for an individual or a company. Now, having said all that, it's time for a word from our sponsor. And the sponsor for today's video is that's right, crickets. I don't have any sponsors, nor have I sought them out. This is really a labor of love. Number 4, what is the goal of the website? Once again, that often is found in the About section for that website. In my videos, I try to communicate that the goal of my videos is to take what I taught in the classroom and make it available to anyone, anywhere on YouTube. So look for some sort of explanation of who they are and what the goal of their channel is. Number 5, reliability of information. How dependable is the information on that website or video? If it sounds too amazing or too good, it probably is. Use the same test as you would with the book. Who published it? What's its date of publication? Does it have any endorsements? Does it have bibliographical information at the back? If it doesn't, it's either a pretty poor resource or it's a dead-end source. You don't know where to go to get more information. Let's say they mention something that you find very, very interesting. Well, if they don't have bibliographical or footnote information, you're not going to know where to go to dig deeper. This is one area where Wikipedia is often very, very strong. I know they got a bad rap. Often there is an extensive bibliographical section at the bottom of the different articles. Other sources like Encyclopedia Britannica have links as well. How well is it written and composed? If it's filled with all sorts of grammatical and spelling mistakes, it's probably not very reliable. Trustworthy sites will often include links to other reputable sites, publications, institutions, and so on. Now, a great test, and it doesn't work always, but a great test is if you go to those sites, there may be a link back to the original site you were looking at. Click on it and see if it brings you back. This sort of double validation with these links is often a pretty good standard to find. Number 6, I can count on 2 hands. Awards, institutional affiliation, and other forms of validation, sort of like the endorsements at the back of a book. Some websites will list awards that they have received from well-known institutions, so keep an eye out for these awards as they will often let you know that the awarding institution stands behind the information found on that website. My friend Ian Paul, with his website Pacisto, has an award for having one of the best blogs in England on his About page. This type of validation is very, very helpful for you. There are a lot of semi-orthodox or unorthodox individuals and groups that have posted information on the internet. So you, as the consumer of their information, must be very wary of which sites that you're getting information from. As I said at the start of this video, don't just rely on one of these criteria. You might need to rely on a couple of them in combination. But if a site does not turn up any of these criteria, I would be very hesitant to base anything I think or believe on what they have to say. I hope that this video has given you some really useful criteria to follow, especially given the challenge that we face today with information overload. In the next video, I hope to review and list some of the best websites I know for doing biblical and theological research, specifically on the area of the New Testament. Now, once that video is posted, I will have a link for you over here in this video. If you click on the link down here, that will take you to the video that YouTube thinks you will enjoy the most. If you click on the little cartoon of my head over here, you will be subscribed to the channel. Until then, peace.